Good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to episode 36 of the Matt and Matt O Scale Trains podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rochford, and with me are my buddies and my co-hosts,
Matt Zazua
and Johnny Nugent.
Matt, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. I really enjoyed our last episode with Mr. Ken. I really liked that one. That was a lot of fun. I got to hear authentic New York. Hey, I'm walking here.
It's like the hardest I ever heard you laugh, man.
That was fun, I gotta say.
We've had some pretty awesome guests these past couple episodes. It's mind blowing and really humbling at the same time.
You know, it's interesting you say that too, Johnny, because I think people will be surprised by our future guests that we have in the lineup. I don't want to say anything right now because I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, we're going to have some amazing guests on in the next few months.
Oh, yeah.
Johnny, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. They dragged me back here kicking and screaming, saying you have to do another episode. I begged and pleaded and said no, but here I am. So I guess I'm here for another episode.
Well, I'm glad you could join us.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I am super excited for tonight's episode. However, as always, we have, a few podcast items to cover before we delve into our podcast main topic. So as always, everyone, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon Music. I also, of course, wanted to mention our Discord server, which is now over 100 members. It is going crazy. We got a lot of great people in there. This is, again, a public Discord, so anyone is obviously free to join it. You do have to read the rules and acknowledge that you did read them and that you will abide by them, since we are a community server, and that's a little different from our private servers on Discord. We have a great group of moderators. A couple of them are on the podcast right now, who will always make sure that folks are treated with respect and keep our community safe. Now, I will place a link in the Discord show notes. As always, all you have to do is click on that link, and it will add you into the server. You'll have to, again, just acknowledge that you read the rules, and you can start chatting away, introduce yourself, get on one of the voice chats, and talk with the many folks that have joined our server in the last couple of weeks. Secondly, let's talk about our Matt and Matt merch. So if you always wanted a Matt and Matt hat or a shirt or a coffee mug, I actually have a coffee mug, and I'm going to order a shirt here pretty soon. You can go to the link that I will put in the show notes. And if you do order, you can use our merch code of MAMPOD, and you will get 10% off. Now, with that said, let's dig into tonight's main topic, and we're going to talk about the sounds of O scale. And we're going to go over some brief history of sounds. We're going to talk about maybe some of our favorite sounds out there, favorite whistles, horns, bells, engine sounds, just kind of a general casual talk about, all the sound systems in O scale. And then we actually have a special part of this episode where Mr. Matt Z is going to talk about sound customization, and that's going to be really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. So, gentlemen, did you guys have anything before we start?
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds great.
Okay, let's. Is there going to be a lot of sound puns in this episode?
Probably.
Okay,
Maybe.
well,
It depends.
Well, I hear you. I hear what you guys are saying. So,
Yeah, it's pretty loud and clear over here.
oh boy. All right, so let's get started. So I'm going to just chat about the history of Lionel and their sounds, and then Matt Z and Johnny can cover the other manufacturers. Again, this is just a brief history because this isn't, a history lesson or anything like that. We just wanted to kind of give you some introduction to the history of, some of the sounds that, have made O scale probably, if not the best scale for having sounds inside of engines, because I mean, there's no competition, folks, right? Like, it's not even close. All right. So first, let's start at the post-war, right? And with post-war, we got those glorious air whistles and electric horns, right? I think I still have mine too. Like, those are cool. I actually love those. I mean, they're really old school, but it's just really cool that, like, they just had stuff like that. And of course, starting with rail sounds was born as a Sound of Steam in the early 90s. Then we had Rail Sounds 2, which came out in the kind of mid 90s. And that was the first rail sounds, I believe, to have like polyphonic sound. So you could have like more than one, like, a sound note coming through. And I think they kind of boosted the sound quality on those as well. So Rail Sounds 2.5 came out in the late 90s. Rail Sounds 3 was, I believe, like right before the 2000 era. I think they added like Crew Talk and Towercom then, but I couldn't find too much about it. Rail Sounds 4 came out in 2000, and that added 4 RPM levels and a few other little minor items. Rail Sounds 5 came out in, like, I believe 2003, and that added 8 RPM levels, and then there was a lot of just extra stuff that they added in there. Now, that's probably, to me, like one of my favorite, or it probably is like my favorite kind of like sound board that was placed into Lionel engines. I just love Rail Sounds 5. I think it's just fantastic. And I know there's a big argument for Legacy, and Legacy is fantastic. It has a very high quality to it, but I don't know. There's just something about Rail Sounds 5. Now, Rail Sounds 5.5 came out as, like, I think it was like the first gen Legacy was 5.5. And then we finally arrived at Rail Sounds 6.0, which is what we know today as like Legacy sounds. So now going down the list, Matt and Johnny, do you guys have anything you wanted to plug in about that?
For RS5, I completely agree. RS5, the RS5, RS5.5, that era, those were hands down the best sounds I think you'll ever hear out of a Lionel engine. I really think for the early stuff, the road specific Crew Talk that, we all love and can't get enough of, that's unfortunately not really a thing anymore, but can you do? But no, I like that. I've always liked it. RS 5.5, of course, adds a quillable horn and some of the other legacy only goodies, which I think is really cool. And, keep going up the ladder, you get into like Vision Line and some of the other, the stereo sounds that they have. And I think that it's all really cool, and it adds a lot to the overall experience of the train. And I know we'll talk about this later on, but it's cool to kind of hear the evolution of what was then to now. I think it's really cool.
And going back to the very beginning, where you had the classic post-war air whistle and you had the clickety-clack of the wheels on the track. And that is something, while we are focusing on the modern sounds here tonight, about the electronic sounds, trying to be replicating the authentic sounds of an engine or bringing back that experience, I'd like to take a moment and appreciate that post-war stuff, because sometimes, with all these sound systems, nothing beats just turning it down and just hearing the click-clack of those train wheels on the track and hearing that classic air whistle. And the beauty in that was that back then you didn't have these sounds. So that little air whistle, combined with a child's imagination, there's a lot of imagination to go into it to make it be that powerful steam engine. And that there's a certain magic that goes into that. Going into Rail Sounds 5, like you guys have both mentioned, that was a great era. The later TMCC early Legacy era was great for sounds, for digital sounds. You had Lionel going above and beyond for their sound sets, because almost every single one of them seemed like it was unique and brand new. Every engine sounded different. Every engine sounded unique. And the addition of the different crew talks, the different dialects, the different road specific crew talk really made every single engine a unique experience. I know we brought it up multiple times in the past, but I always go back to the example of my TMCC GS2, the number 4410. That engine is amazing. And the crew talk is just so well done. It's so professionally done, and it's just very realistic and laid back. The fact that there's pauses in the engineer's voice, 4410, are we clear to go yet? The pauses make it feel more realistic and less scripted, and that's something, unfortunately, we just don't see in the modern stuff nowadays. And if you really want the best era of sounds, definitely later TMCC, early Legacy, and with Legacy, you have the quillable whistles as well. And going from an era where you couldn't quill to be able to fully play with that whistle and be in full control of it, it just opens up a completely different realm of opportunity and really makes those trains come to life for you there.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about just going back to what you're talking about, like post-war stuff. And you're right, like kids, there wasn't a lot going out in terms of sounds because we were all using our imagination, right? But it was like the sounds were like, I don't know if this kind of makes sense, but the sounds were visual, right? Like when you're a kid and you're running like an old post-war steam engine, you in the back of your mind, you were just slowly watching those gears turn and the drivers move, and just in the back of your mind you're just hearing all this like steam sounds come out of it. And like we all do, like, I mean, even today, like, we all use our imagination when we're running trains because that's gives us joy. We want to feel like we're actually in the train, running the train, right? Or at least I do. That's how I kind of run my stuff. I want to pretend that I'm there, like I'm in the train, I'm running it, and one of the things that had pulled me into sounds, or I should say into O scale, especially in the more like high end things, are just these amazing like sound packages that you can get. And, station sounds diners where they do all this stop, and MTH with their kind of like, where they build the name of the train like into the actual Protosound board, so you feel like that is the train. That's the exact train that was running that specific route. That was the F3 running the Super Chief route. Way back in the day, and it makes everything just come to life, right? It just kind of puts it on a different level.
Those freight cars and station sounds cars, that's a really good point there, Matt. I can't really say as much because I don't really have as many of the higher end freight cars that Lionel's put out, but at least from a guy who's had the conventional ones, such as like the old OG Freight Sounds box car, the scale ones, and the PFE car that came out. Those add a lot to your consist and to your overall enjoyment of a freight train. Before you get those, all you have is you add the engine, which is your big star, and then you just have the cars. And sometimes, you kind of lose interest, like, oh, they're just freight cars. But once you have those sounds and you spread them in your consist, and the train goes by, you're engaged, you're hooked into it, and it adds so much the overall just orchestra of sound that comes from your train. And I can't recommend them enough. But I'll hand these over to you guys, because you guys have some of the Vision Line ones, which are even crazier.
Yeah, the Vision. I got 3 sets of the reefers and a set of the Vision tank cars, and let me tell you, all of them are fantastic. I think the winner, is the tank cars, but the reefers are fantastic. Not to throw those away, because they're great cars, but the tank cars, those are great. I know, Matt, you got them too, and they're fantastic. For a modern train, they're really good. They got, the scrapes and squeals and little bumps and stuff. It's a lot of fun running those, especially when you throw them in a train, like Johnny said, like throw them, space them out enough to make it seem believable. It's even better. And that to me is just something that really you can't, once you do it, you can't live without it. I think they're really a ton of fun.
No, I think you're exactly right, Matt. Like they're very addictive. Once you get one, you're like, oh yeah, okay, well, I need more now. But yeah, those tank cars, I have the reefers, I have the cattle cars, I have a bunch of the newer reefers. I have two of the newer reefers that have the simulated cold fog, when you open the doors, and I have a couple others like standard freight cars as well. And they just add so much. They add so much to your train and to your layout, and they make everything come to life. And one of the great things about those, at least like the the ones that don't have the boards inside, right? Like the ones that don't have actually a command board inside, is you can put those like on any layout. Like even somebody who's just running some Lion Chief stuff, right? You're just running like let's say you have like a smaller layout. You just have a few like Lion Chief items. I mean, you could put them on a conventional layout if you wanted to. And they give so much atmosphere and ambience to your sound, and you don't have to spend a ton of money on those either to add so much to your layout is in terms of like just like overall sounds and stuff like that. So they are a great deal. I mean, I think the ones that are non-command, I think they run around the $100 mark, and you could probably get them cheaper sometimes if they go on sale. But if you don't have one, I would suggest you either go on YouTube and look them up, or just, if you know somebody who has one, borrow one and put it on your layout. And I guarantee you, you will fall in love with it, and you will go and you will buy more for sure.
Yeah, they're amazing. I have the conventional ones, like I said, and you can run them with anything. All you really need to do is just make sure you have track power and just push them along. If you can, heck, they still work with you pushing it with your hand. It doesn't have to be behind a locomotive. Like the clanking of the wheels and the hissing of the air brakes when the train stops just adds so much. And like I try to have at least 2 or 1 Freight Sounds boxcar in my consist from this point forward. Like it changes everything. And yeah, the price tag's a little bit much at times. So I can understand folks who are like, it's $100. I don't know if I want to spend that much money on a freight car, but definitely recommend it. But yeah, I completely agree with you guys. Now, the other thing I want to ask is, I think both of you have experienced this, or at least I know Matt R. has. What are your guys' thoughts on the station sounds cars that Lionel's released over the years?
Probably my favorite type of sound car, to be honest with you. I love that you can add something into your passenger consist and have it be so integrated into the train route that you're running, right? I know back in the day, recently some of the newer ones don't actually say the name of the railroad, and that might be like a licensing thing. But I know a lot of the Station Sounds diners, the Team CC ones, they will say the name of the railroad and the name of the train of the route. Like, my Santa Fe Chief, he says like, this is the Santa Fe Chief, Santa Fe Super Chief. I mean, they'll actually say the name of the, the actual train and the route. But it's more than just that too. Like, I mean, the conductor will say, all aboard. There's somebody doing the announcements for, the train is about to leave. There's dining calls when it's running around your layout. Like where like the freight cars give that kind of like you're moving freight cars around. This gives that, hey, I'm running a passenger train right now, and here's all the sounds that are going on in the passenger cars. And it's not just the conductor sounds and the announcer sounds and the dining calls. It's those station sounds cars also have like a clickety clack. They have brake sounds on them as well, air release sounds, and I think I said this on one of our podcasts before, but with the legacy ones, if you have a legacy station sounds car diner and you have a legacy diesel engine or steam engine, whatever, but if you put them in a train and then activate the what is that mode called, Matt?
Sequence control.
Sequence. Yeah, if you activate the sequence control, everything will work seamlessly together, and you don't even have to use like the train link button. Like once you start moving that throttle off of 1 and you get to 2, the conductor will automatically just say like, all aboard, the train's moving, whatever. And it's like you don't have to even touch anything. Like all the sounds are done for you automatically, and it's such a really cool thing. So yeah, definitely station sounds diners are probably my favorite type of sound car. What do you think, Matt?
So I got a funny story with this. So I had the Trailblazer Pennsylvania sound diner. I really like that. I traded it to Sid, and we're working on another project which is to be unnamed. You guys know about it, but I'll leave it for everybody else to figure it out later. But so my uncle, he's got a couple of the sounds cars, the station sounds. So he got in the Texas Special, the ABS plastic 21-inch run of cars for his E8s. And so I take it out of the box, program it, whatever, throw it on the layout, start messing with the sounds. So you hit the key that does the PA guy. The guy that did the sounds on the Texas Special, real thick, heavy voice. Oh God, it was the best sound I think I've ever heard on a diner. Look up my video. It was just him and I. We were laughing, having a good old time with this thing. It was so cool. I mean, I'm not going to imitate it, but it was oh God, it was so fun. I love that set. The whole diner car experience, like Matt said, it's unlike anything you'd ever think of. It's it really is the whole thing from beginning to end. You pull into a station, says station stop. The newer ones say the station stop. The older ones just say like next stop, which I like that they're adding the stops in there now. But yeah, they are really fun. Like the freight cars, pick up a set, pick up any train name you want. They've pretty much got a sound car for you. Pick the name, buy it, go. You will not be disappointed at all. They are pricey, but they're worth it. They really are.
Yeah, no, those are great. And hearing you guys talk about it makes me want to get one for my ski train consist. I know both Matts have been egging me on to get that, and also by extension, I'll let Matt R talk about this one if he wants to. But the generator car, which is also a very unique car that you can get in certain freight sets and certain passenger sets. That's one that I'm very curious about after hearing Matt's one of his reefer cars that have a generator sound set, and I'm kind of curious about that. But yeah, no, like you guys said, the diner car, the diner sound set, the station stops. It's one of the things that Lionel does really well. And especially with what's available, for example, and we'll get into this later, for MTH, you have your PFA sequence, your passenger station announcements. But that only happens when you're idle and at a station. When the train's going, you can't really do as much of that. But with Lionel, it is an experience at the station. It is an experience when you're on the move. It's an experience as it's going down the line, which is something that I think is really awesome.
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely bring up the generator when we get into our part of the episode here, where we kind of talk about some of our favorite sound sets and stuff like that. I'll definitely bring that up for sure. I think for now, let's move into because I didn't want to go off track too much, but because we talked about the history of Lionel sounds, let's delve into some of the other manufacturers, and I'm just going to pass this over to Matt Z. He's our resident MTH expert. And I don't know, Matt, maybe you can talk about like Williams and Atlas and Weaver too for a bit. Yeah. So yeah, go right ahead.
Alrighty. So we'll lump the Weaver, Atlas, and K-Line into one bunch, because for those engines, regardless of which ones you buy, the sound files themselves change, but the platform is all the same. So it's a licensed version of Rail Sounds 4 TMCC. So you get, your 32 speed steps. For sound, you get your typical Rail Sounds 4. So you get the on the 2 key, it's the kind of that walkie-talkie kind of sort of thing. And then for number 7, it's a generic, you're cleared outbound or standby kind of sort of thing. You get whatever horn you get, horn, whistle, bell, whatever. That's just the way they did it. Now, ERR, the Electric Railroad Company, they now have more updated sounds. It's still TMCC, but it's the legacy light rail sounds, which is basically the new stuff that they're coming out with. Not the 5-horn thing, but just the regular single note, one whistle kind of thing, but with the more legacy style crew talk. So you get the tower comm and the crew talk and stuff like that. It's a lot better than it was before. Let's say the early to mid 2000s. But they're really nice. For Williams, I've heard some of the Williams stuff. It sounds really good. I mean, for what it's worth, these engines are not very expensive at all. And yeah, it's a conventional sound system, but what it is, it's really good. I mean, it's definitely not up there with like legacy or anything, but it's for what it is. And you got to take some of these things with a grain of salt, but it's really good. And I like it. I know Matt and we've talked about getting some Williams stuff just because it's fun, and that's sometimes it's what you need in the hobby.
Yeah, for the Williams stuff, the Williams and the Bachmann stuff, one of the ones that really blew me away has to be the sound set that was in the P-42 Genesis when they released that. That one, when I watched it, I was like, wow, that sounds spot on. It's really cool, really amazing. But once again, the thing that really kind of let it down for me personally, and that's just a personal bias, is that I wish that when you hit the direction button, the sounds didn't cut out entirely. You could probably fix it with a capacitor or some sort, but the prime mover sounds were great. The horn sounded amazing. The bell sounded amazing. Just great sound set overall.
Yeah, the only one I can attest to is I have a Williams trolley, and it's one of the newer ones. And I can say I was pretty impressed. It's conventional. It's not a command trolley, but I'll tell you what, the bell and the little horn, it's actually pretty top notch for a little conventional engine. So, and these are the ones where like they hide like the gearing and everything for the motor, like underneath. So there's, all you see are the seats. And I'm like, I don't even know where they're putting this soundboard and the speaker on this thing. But yeah, I was very, very impressed with that. So I imagine that their other products are probably on par or just as, even better.
Yeah, I agree. I saw DJ's review. He actually did a review for me on that trolley when I found him years ago. I asked him if he had one or something like that. And he did a video, and I'm like, man, that thing is fantastic. The interior and everything else. I really need to get one. Maybe it'll be on our 2022 year in review. We'll see. But
I'll really hold you to that.
Okay. You can. Fine. Okay.
Remember this, listeners. Remember this.
We have an audio recording of this, Matt. See,
that's true.
Skip forward a year. If he hasn't bought one, we all get to the right to shame him on the podcast. There we go.
Okay. You can. Bet. So we're going to go into the MTH realm. And so with MTH, there's really two main ways that they did their sounds. So the first way was Proto Sound. Now, when you get the Proto 2, this is now called Proto 1. However you want to say that is fine. Proto Sound, Proto 1, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing. So the very early there was multiple iterations of Proto Sound. There's a guy that I'll check out on the forum. He knows them all, but I don't. But in any event, the two main differences with the Proto Sound was that there was an early version that did not have the battery backup, and then the later version did. But with MTH Proto 1, it's basically a conventional engine with a really cool sound system. And there was, other spin-offs, I guess, with this. With the Proto Sound system was licensed by QSI. So QSI in turn did a bunch of things. They did like the QSI 3000 and a couple other, proprietary systems that they use that they then licensed to MTH and threw in some features. But like I said, in the end, it's a conventional engine with a really cool sound system. Now, there have been attempts to, I shouldn't say attempts, actual successes to do what I'm about to say, which is have the Proto One sounds function with Legacy and TMCC. So it's a TMCC board. Okay, so with the board, the way this works is that for Proto Sound, there's a top board and a bottom board. So the top board has all your sounds in it. It's got the sound chip, which is removable, and I'll talk about this in a minute. But the bottom board has your motion and your lights and all that sort of thing with it. So what this board did, which was called it was the equalizer board or it was the UCub board. And what these did was you replace the bottom board with the bottom board that comes with the kit. And what it did was it decoded the sounds to work with the Legacy or TMCC system. Now, this was TMCC days, so it was, it's your typical, you can run it off Legacy, but you got to program it as a TMCC, that sort of thing. So, but this did work. However, it gave you some of the sounds, not quite everything. So the biggest thing that you lose, and it started off with, this was in 1996 and going into the end of Proto Sound, so into 2000, was the passenger station or the freight sounds. So the early stuff was just fantastic. I've got a bunch of examples in it. The one I'm showcasing here would be the 611, the Powhatan Arrow. Beautiful set. The engine is really cool. I believe it's got Tony Lash's voice on it. So if you've listened to our interview with Sid, you'll know that name. But really cool passenger sound sequence on that one. And that kind of thing just kind of sort of went into the whole Proto Sound platform, be it freight or passenger. For freight, it was a little different. For the steam, it was basically just, people moving boxes around, that sort of thing. For the diesels, it did have some, chatter with like a tower operator. And then for idle sounds, you had, for steam, you had your blow down, your water injector, those sorts of sounds. For diesels, you did have cab chatter, which is really kind of cool to hear that. And it was just a very good sound system that was conventional. So it was just like a regular, old school Lionel. You just throw it on the layout, let it go, and that was that. So this did use a battery, this was, I think the first sound system to do this was to use the battery. So you did have to make sure that was fully charged. And we've talked about this prior, but that's the way we do for Proto One. And that lasted, like I said, till around 2000. And after that, you get Proto 2. So Proto 2, there's two different versions, 3 volt and 5 volt. And we've talked about this previously, so I'm not going to go into that. But with Proto 2, you get DCS capability. So with this, you get, all your sounds, you get your, your whistle bell, your RPM levels, your chuffing, all that sort of thing. And what you got was idle sounds, which were a myriad of different things. It's got water injector, it's got blow down, it's got random little air spits and all kinds of stuff in there. It's basically, you name it, it's in there. It's really pretty cool. So you got that in there for your diesels. You got a bunch of different crew sounds. You got so for your freight ones, you got a freight script, which depending on the engine you have, it's usually era and route specific. So like for a Reading steam engine, for example, it was a coal seam up in the mountains or something like that. And obviously, again, this varied from engine to engine. There's a bunch of different ones floating around. Then for passenger, it was the train, with the associated stops on most of the later ones. After I believe 2002, they started putting the stops in there. But it was the train name, whatever it is. So I'll just use train number 19, the Chief. Stick with the Santa Fe theme. That was one in there. And again, this varied from model to model, but the whole premise was it shows everything. It goes through the whole thing. It's got people getting on and off the train, people, maybe asking for directions or whatever it be. And then towards the end, you get the train departing sequence, and then you get the crew getting the thing ready to go, and then it takes off. It's really, really cool. And it's further expanded upon in Proto 2 3 volt, because by that point you get other benefits. You get short whistles, you get crossing sounds, you get, quillable whistles and some of the later Premier Line stuff. And it's really, really cool to have all those things. And further still, in Proto 3, you get even more. Basically take a lot of those classic Proto 2 files, and they manipulated them, and we'll talk about this in the custom section. And you can basically do whatever you want with them. And they took those, kind of mashed them together, and had some fun with them. And you got some new voices, and it's just really, really cool. MTH, at least for me anyway, is hands down the leader in the overall sound files themselves. Quality is hands down Lionel. I think if you ask 10 people, you would probably get 10 answers saying Lionel, just because the files from MTH are great. The quality is there. It's not as crisp as Lionel, as Lionel, but it is really, it's good. And Lionel just kicks it up a notch with the bassiest speakers, and the way they do it is just fantastic. So that's all I got for right now.
Yeah, I'll tack onto that too. Now that you've just kind of on the same subject as far as like MTH versus Lionel. And here are my thoughts. Again, this is my personal opinion, so I'm not speaking for anybody, but I have a lot of MTH engines. I have a lot of Lionel engines. And I can speak from experience. For me, Lionel definitely has higher quality samples and better speakers, like Matt said. I think where MTH shines is in the variety area, and they were the first ones to kind of do like that true kind of radio chatter back and forth, where this is like something new that Lionel had just kind of put in the last couple of years. They finally decided to put in that kind of like that radio chatter where it's like, kind of back and forth, and some actual like radio sounds taken from like the railroad, whereas MTH has been doing that for a long time. So again, I'm not going to say, it's a really hard to answer who has the better sounds, because in a way they're both kind of equal, whereas one does something more superior and the other one does something else superior. And, I like them both, and I have no quirks for either one. I like MTH. I like Lionel sounds. I think they both have their uniqueness to them. I'll talk more about, some of my favorite sound sets when we get into, obviously, that later on when we talk about like our favorite sounds and stuff like that. But, to me, there's no definitive answer. They're both great. And, I can't wait for, what MTH and Lionel has in store for us down the road in terms of how sounds are going to evolve with newer technology.
Kind of piggybacking off the MTH thing here, because Matt Z covered quite a lot in terms of the history for MTH. MTH was quite revolutionary at the time when QSI and Proto 1 came out. And you'll never find a bigger defender of Proto 1 than Matt Z. I mean, there's no one else on this planet I can think of who loves it more than him. But
you're not wrong.
Exactly. But you insult Proto One, it's like you're insulting one of his babies. Like you can't go there. But in terms of Proto One, it offers quite a lot. The crew chatter, as Matt R said, that was something that MTH did out the get go, like proper radio chat, not just like scripted events and like just like it was actual radio chatter, and that was really awesome. The sounds weren't like cheesy; they were very powerful, and that was game changing at the time for O Scale, and kind of helped moved it towards having more sounds and such. And Lionel was doing really great stuff at the time too. But personally, for me, I thought MTH really blew it out of the water. And especially at the entry level, when they moved up to Proto 2, for example, you got Proto 2 in a starter set, and you could use that from your starter set to command when you move to command or conventional command. It was all the same high quality sounds from the get go. And Lionel's doing the same thing in their sets now too, which is really great to see. But Proto 2, Proto 3, they're absolutely amazing. I've noticed MTH does tend to do a little bit more homework on their research, so sounds tend to be a little bit more accurate, especially for things like the diesels, the SD70s, ACEs. Their prime movers are spot on, the bells are spot on, horns are great, and they just blow it out of the water for their diesel stuff. And to kind of touch back on the PFA sequence, and Matt R can really relate to this, when it comes to local stuff, especially like Metro, like we've talked about in the past, where you hear them recreating the actual announcements you hear at the stations, or those station stops where for myself and for him, where it lists the towns that we either live in or worked in or are very familiar with, that can make or break it. I had the opportunity to either have a custom Lionel Metro F40 or an MTH Proto Sound 3 one. And I went with the MTH one just because the sounds are more spot on. They were more personal since it was more local, and it just made that decision so much easier for me, just because it made it not only a cool model, but a model that really hit home. And for those of you who want more specific sounds rather than a generic sound, MTH is the way to go through and through. And the last thing I'll say is, Matt Z, as much as I love the Proto One sounds, every time I hear one of your Proto One steam engines, I feel like sending you a bag of cough drops. So I don't know.
Yeah, I have heard that a time or two. Man, it sounds like you're having a bad cough, or he's running a Proto One of the two. Hey, the one that really gets you going is my DD1. That one, I don't know what it is about that engine, but you guys can hear it even with the noise suppression and everything. You guys can hear it when I got it all the way up. So I don't know what the deal with that one is.
Yeah, join the Discord. You can hear Matt's DD1s apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. They go turn that DD1 down. They go, why? You guys can hear it? He goes, yeah, I can hear it clear as day. It's like, come on, man. Yeah. But no, I don't know.
Well, we don't call you Papa Proto One for nothing. So
what can I say? What can I say? It's what I grew up on. So
no, I like Proto One sounds too. I think they're, when you look at like actually how old they are, and then you think about it, you're like, wow, that's pretty good for when those came out. So. And
that was state of the art back then. It was like, I mean,
yeah, no, it totally was.
Yeah, like everything we talked about thus far, even Real Sounds 1. I mean, back then that was that was the stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, that was the hot ticket. Yeah. You know what I mean? And to watch it go and evolve into what we have now, it's like, to go from that to what we have now, it's like, wow, it's crazy. I mean, I ran my B6 the other day, and I'm thinking, man, this is what it was like 30 years ago for sounds, and it's so cool. I love it.
I think we should go back to the days where we had MPC tenders with beads and rollers. I think that's the zenith of train sounds right there. Obviously,
is that Rail Sound 7?
It's going to be the new Vision Line feature.
The new old or whatever. Like, yeah.
What's old is new again?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have to ask Ryan to bring the beads back, I guess.
All right. We'll just make a note of that on the next catalog episode.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, this is actually a good segue into our next segment where let's just talk about like some of our favorite sound sets of all time. And I'll start out. I have a few, definitely. As far as like Lionel goes, I can tell you, like, just recently the Sharks that just came out last year. Oh my gosh, those things, probably one of, if not the best sound sets that I've heard from Lionel in a very long time. The engine is spot on. It's very unique, obviously, and it has that kind of like gruffiness to it, and that kind of that idling sound that's just so awesome to hear. They just, and obviously, it has the additional horns and bells and stuff on there, but man, I don't know, that engine sound is like the best diesel engine sound I think that I own in my collection. As far as steam engines go, it's hard to beat my Northern Santa Fe Northern, my TMCC Northern whistle. It's not the loudest thing in the world, but it just has a great just sound to it, echoing sound to it, and I absolutely can't get enough of it. But of course, as far as like my number one favorite sounds, definitely, got to give props to the Metra engines by MTH. Like Johnny had said, like, I mean, my hometown, my town that I live in now, like the stop is on there. Like, how is that not awesome? Right. But, yeah, I think we all know where I'm going with this, but I think the best sounds, my favorite sound package is probably in the subways. And I think Matt Z could probably acknowledge that too.
Yeah. I knew it was coming. Yeah.
Come on. I'm sorry, everybody. I went there. I apologize to all the.
I was going to say it anyway,
people,
so.
But I know you were. We kind of had to say it. But just like, I mean, if you live in Chicago, like, and you're familiar with all of the CTA routes, they're different colors and stuff like that. There's a blue line, red line, pink line, red line, and like they get it. Like they actually have each individual sound set from each of the routes, and it's just amazing that they put the time and effort into that. And some of those sounds are pulled directly from like CTA samples, I can tell you. And like even my bicentennial set, which is kind of based on like 70s, is got like a 70s kind of atmosphere sound to it. And it's so impressive. I love it. I think it's one of the best things at least in the sound department that I've heard. And again, folks, I'm a little biased on this, because look, I'm from Chicago. I see subways every day. It's part of my everyday lifestyle. I see Metro engines in subways. I see Metro engines more in subways because I live in Elmhurst, but obviously I travel quite a bit into the city and stuff like that. And, it just, anything local, any sounds that are local to me that are resident of like Chicago based stuff is just gets a A++ in my department. So, I'll go ahead and I'll pass this on to I don't know, Johnny, you want to go next?
Sure, I'll take the baton here. So, in terms of sound sets, I guess I'll start off with Lionel here. Lionel has made some great sound sets, especially in the steam department. And some of my favorite steam sounds have to be some Lionel. Probably currently the one that holds that position for one of the best is one I've talked about previously in the podcast. And that is the Lionel Legacy 2696 Chesapeake, Ohio, Berkshire from the Empire Builder set. That engine has one of the most unique whistles I've ever heard. It's a very classic, deep, throaty East Coast Chesapeake and Ohio steam whistle. And it's the only time I used in that engine. And it quills extremely well. And when you have it at that the last tone, you can actually hear the sound becoming almost like discordant because there's so much steam and power flowing through the whistle at the time. And I love that. The chuff is deep. The crew talk's amazing. The bell is really awesome as well. Just overall, it's a really cool engine. home runs that I can guarantee a lot of folks will agree with me on this one is the 765 whistle that they put on the nickel plate road Berks. They're spot on. If you want to model 765 during her times and on the New River Train and the 80s and 90s, can't get a better whistle than that. And I absolutely love that. In terms of MTH, I love the Metro F40. Once again, like I'm with Matt there. It's local, it's home. And to be able to hear that on your engine when you're running it just kind of makes it even more personal and special. But the one that I think I have to say is probably one of my favorites, and this comes to no surprise to anybody, and I can already hear RBP mocking me right now, is I love the daylight sounds for MTH. All the way from Proto 1, Proto 2, and Proto 3. Proto 1, you have, I think, one of the best GS4 whistles. You can't get a more accurate whistle than that. And they had that sound set with the bell. Both the bell, the whistle was amazing. I grew up on the Proto 2 sound set, which was even better than that. And just the whistle is spot on for 4449 between the 90s to the early 2010s. But I think the one that I like the most has to be the Proto 3 version, which I remember I showed to Matt Z when he and I were building a custom sound set. And if he wants to touch on that, he's more than welcome to. We listened to the Great Crossing whistle, and I pulled an actual sound recording from Brad Miller, and we did them side by side, and it was almost we were convinced that they were basically the same clip. It was that spot on. So just MTH, like I said, really does their homework with their sound sets. They do amazing. I think MTH has some of the best diesel sound sets out there. Steam, you might get the bassier chuff and the better quill whistle from Lionel, but sometimes when MTH is able to do the research and get the sounds right off the engine, it is a ballpark home run every single time. But yeah, favorites have to be the Burke, the F40, and the GS4. So those are my favorites. How about you, Matt Z?
I'm going to summarize basically what all you guys said. Diesels, Lionel, the Baldwin or Elko. Elko for a very specific reason, which we cannot put on here due to copyright reasons. Fantastic sounds. The way they kind of just rumble to life and really give that power throat bass in there. Oh man, it is just fantastic all the way. As far as actual sounds, like engines themselves, I have RS11, so I'm partial to Elko. But these Baldwin Sharks, I've really liked. I liked them when I saw them. I liked them when I heard them. I still really like them, and I still want us. That is where I'm going with this. But they are really nice engines. Like I said, they really got some bass in there. You throw super bass B units in there, which is something we didn't touch on earlier. But basically, a quick 30-second version. They add bass, as the name implies, to the sounds that are already there in the engine. So you get a bassier prime mover, a bassier horn, a lot more volume because they got a better speaker system because there's no motors in there. Really cool sound package in that engine. I know, Matt, you got some of those, but they're really cool. As far as Steam goes, all the Lionel Steam sounds are great. I think probably my favorite of the bunch is an engine that I don't have yet, but I have played with, which was the Milwaukee Road S3. And that one, I really like that. I got one on the way, so. But, yeah, that one's really cool. The K4, I really like. I got the Tuscan Red. Thanks, DJ. K4, I love the sound set on that one. That one is really, really good. MTH, I would be crazy if I didn't mention something Proto 1. So, all the Proto 1, really the diesels and the passenger steam engines, really, really cool. For command, it's got to be really any of the early 5-volt steam engines, the bass and the volume. I mean, I got the Unshrouded J, and to that thing, I've got some other MTH 5-volt engines that sound good, when I turned that thing on for the first time, I think I leaped backwards. I mean, it was crazy, the volume out of that thing. I mean, and it's the same speaker that all these other ones have, but it's just the volume is crazy on that thing. It sounds fantastic. Really love it. And then obviously anything with the passenger sounds like we talked about earlier. And then I got to give it to them. My New York subways, they are fantastic. The one of the guys who did it, Dennis Shore, he unfortunately passed away. He did fantastic voice tracks. Really fun. The auto mode, I know we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go crazy on this one either, but the auto mode really adds a lot to it. You get the people getting on and off the train, the hot dogs, and maybe we'll get one that says "I'm walking here." We'll see. But I tell you, hey Ken, if you're listening to this, man, we need to get you having a New York thing on there, man. It'd be something. I'd buy them all. But really cool the way they did that, and it's really fun. And an honorable mention that is not a subway but it is a trolley is, I know, Matt, it was your video that made me want this, is the Brill with the Christmas with the elf as the announcer. That one's really fun. I edited the sound set in that one, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but I added the stop where it has a change in it, and it says it's the coal mine, and as obviously as the name implies, it's the change is all bad girls and boys must exit the trolley here. So I when I did that, I'm like, oh God, this thing just went from great to fantastic. I love it. So really cool stuff. As you can tell in my voice and everything, I'm very passionate about this, and I think that sounds really make or break a model. So, but I think like when you have this level of variation in the sounds, you kind of pick and choose, obviously, the ones you want. But I think that overall, you get an experience that is unlike anything any of us, I think, would ever really dreamed about. And I think it's just a really, really cool thing to have, is sounds of any kind in these model trains.
Yeah, and I think before we move into our customization segment, I just wanted to kind of hitch on to something that you said, Matt, and also something that Johnny said in our previous podcast with Ken, is that nowadays, like, sounds can really determine a purchase or not. And I know I've actually had sounds be a factor in my decision making, whether I was going to pick up a certain engine or a certain set or not. So I think we can all agree that, look, sounds are an integral part of O-scale engines, or all kinds of engines, whatever, electrical, diesel, steam. And, it's really important that these manufacturers get it right. Because like me, for myself, it is one of the driving factors for me. I can see the most beautiful engine, and if it doesn't sound the way I like, or it doesn't sound close to what it prototypically should, there's a chance that I could pass on it.
I totally agree with you there. And all three of us have sat in the Discord call and debated this back and forth endlessly. But yeah, a sound set can really make or break an engine. It helps with the immersion so much, especially in this day and age where it's very, you have, what it is what it is. And when you have a good sound set, and it helps you, a good sound set can help engage the imagination and really help you feel immersed in the action. For me, with my 765 Berkshire, my 759 Berkshire that has 765 sounds on it, I can walk besides the engine around the layout and play with the whistle and have the chuff cranked up with the full labor, and it can help immerse me into feeling like I'm on that excursion. I'm at the cab and going on the line there, like that. That's something that's really important. What would you rather choose for a starter set, for example? Would you rather choose the starter set with a very basic sound package, or one that has a bunch of bells and whistles on there that helps a child get into the hobby? A good sound set has to be very well designed, has some creativity and imagination into it, because by extension, it'll help the person getting into the hobby use their own imagination, creativity, which is what Model Trains is all about. So that's a really important factor.
Yeah, I give kudos to Lionel. And speaking of like starter sets, Johnny, like a lot of these new Lion Chief and Lion Chief Plus sets, they all have like road specific crew talk too. Like even like naming the this is Union Pacific 844. We're headed into the station, or they've actually taken Station Sounds diners and like plugged them into the actual like sequence of the train as well. So in fact, another good example would be look at all these train sets that use IPs like the Harry Potter train and the Disney trains. I mean, you can't tell me that sounds aren't like a big, huge part of the selling of these sets, right?
You forgot one, Polar Express.
Oh, the creme de la creme.
How do you
right?
forget that one? Come on.
The creme de la creme
from Christmas.
No, but I mean it sounds are so cool, and I think Lionel's definitely did well in the last few years with giving starter sets top-notch sounds, which I honestly think was very much needed in that department.
Same.
All right, let's go ahead and move into our customization segment of tonight's episode. And I am going to, again, pass this over to Matt Z. And I know Johnny has worked with Matt Z on some custom stuff too. So this is not my specialty. So I'm going to be quiet and try to get some knowledge from these two experts.
All right. So this is something that it's been in the making. It's been, a thing for a while, but it's getting improvements and whatnot. But so with MTH, there's really two ways you can do their sound. Now this is in Proto 2 and Proto 3 only. The Proto 1 you can't do this with because, like I said before, it's just a conventional, really nice conventional sound system. So, but with Proto 2, any Proto 2, I did it on the very first Proto 2, and up to now, you can either download a sound file off of MTH's website, which is something that I love, because if there's just a file you want and you don't want to touch it, you can just throw it on your engine and be done with it. Whatever additions it has is cool, and you can live with that and have some fun. However, in the recent years, I would say probably within the last 10 years or so, maybe, there's a guy out in California. His name is Mark DeVecchio, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And he made a program called 80PCM. Now, that's a type of audio, and I'm not going to get into it here. And what I'm about to say is a proceed at your own risk kind of thing. I have done a video on this program if you want to learn how to do it, but this is a proceed at your own risk. None of us are responsible for anything that goes wrong with your engine. So just take this information with what you can and have some fun with it. So with this program, what this allows you to do is this allows you to download a file just like you would off of MTH's site. However, when you put this in the program, you can individually, piece by piece, listen to every single chunk of the sound file. So for steam, it's every little air spit, every little, rush of steam, every little blow off, you name it, it's there. All the little ticks and like the water being added to the tender, coal being shoveled in, all of this, chuffing, whistle, bell, the ends to the whistle, the crew talk, some things you would never even think of go into this sound files. You can listen to each individual clip. With diesels too, you can do the same thing. Diesels, you can listen to the prime mover and all that sort of thing. But what you can do is you can take these clips, you can mix and match them however you want. I've done files where I've taken clips from 10 different engines and thrown them all into one one custom file. And Johnny and I, we've done this too, and we can talk about this in a minute. But it's really cool that you can create your own file, and it goes beyond MTH clips. If you want a clip from a video, a YouTube video, or if you want to maybe rickroll somebody, because you could do that too, you can take a clip from a YouTube video, whatever, and throw it in this program, and it'll play through your engine, much like anything, whether it's a horn or a bell clip or prime mover, even if you really wanted to have some fun with it, or crew talk, whatever you like. The skies are really the limit. And there's a guy on the Matt server that we talked to. His name is Michael, and he's done complete custom files down to basically everything. He's basically taken all the stock MTH clips and replaced them with clips of his own. I've done this not in quite the same fashion. I've taken MTH clips and put them into an MTH custom sound file for DJ and myself. We've done Subway custom files. Some of the earlier MTH Subways, there were some, I won't say issues, but things that could be improved. So I'm not going to go into specifics really, but there were some things that needed to be improved, like background sounds in certain sets. Some of the stops were incorrect, so we changed those around. DJ wanted some station stops that were not in the original sets, so I went ahead and did that for him. And like I said, really, the sky's the limit with this. You can do basically whatever you want, and it's really cool to know that a sound file does not have to be just, whatever's on MTH's website. You can make it your own, and that is really, really cool.
Yeah, kind of just piggybacking off of what Matt said. As we said, Matt and I worked together on one of my sound files for my GS project, which I've mentioned before. To be able to kind of pick and choose your sounds here and there and really make a sound set that best suits you is really amazing for the MTH side. I've had times where I've seen a locomotive and I thought it was a really nice model, but hearing the sounds, it's just like, I don't really like how that sounds. Now, in the scope of you aren't able to modify it, if you aren't able to modify that, I would pass that up entirely. I wouldn't bother. But the fact that MTH, you can change the sound set and you can import different sounds, allows you to open up a different horizon, open up your horizons and buy a bunch of different engines. You might not have been able to do so at first. And the Discord server, we have quite a lot of talented individuals who love customizing sound sets. And if you're looking for a place to learn how to do that, or to have a place to ask questions and start, I definitely recommend coming to the Matt and Matt Discord server for that. We actually have a channel dedicated specifically for that. And those guys are absolutely insane with what they can do. It's crazy. Our buddy Michael, who Matt brought up, Matt, I was going to give him a shout out. So you're taking my job of giving people shout outs now.
We both gave him one, so I guess that works out. So
but,
there you go, Michael. There's your shout out, buddy.
Yeah, no, dude, he does some great stuff, and being able to take a sound file and build it up from basically the ground up with custom sounds off of authentic recordings of engines is absolutely amazing. Now, I will also preference this and say that isn't an easy process at all. If you want to make a custom sound set from something off of YouTube, at least from what Matt and others have told me, you have to take that sound, that original file, and compress it and compress it and compress it and compress it, because there really isn't much room on those boards. So it's a very tedious and time-consuming process. One file that Michael is planning to share with me from one of my projects, he's worked several months on it. You know, it's definitely a labor of love, and it's definitely something that if you're very passionate and very patient with it, you can get a very, very nice sound set, a very, very enjoyable experience with your engine from it. But Matt Z, how much room is on those boards?
It depends on the board, and so the early 5-volt engines were only 1 meg. Period. That was all they had, and the early 3 volts from like 2003 to like 2006, give or take, those were 1 meg as well. However, Proto 2, the later 3 volt from like 06 to let's say 2010, 2011, right before the switch to Proto 3, those were 2 meg boards. You can have extra additional features in there. And then from some of the early Proto 3 was not quite 4 meg, it was still 2 meg, but the later Proto 3 from like, I think it was like 2014 on, were all 4 meg boards. And with Proto 3, they have two different types of audio tracks in there, and with Proto 3, some of the tracks are for Proto 3 only. You cannot use them in Proto 2. And if you look at the program, you can see what that's all about. The documentation for that program is really good, by the way. And it allows you, like I said, to have custom things, and it's just really cool to be able to, like I said, mix and match things and make it your own. One thing to know with doing the custom files from a video, that is, as Johnny said, a royal dedication. You got to have time upon time upon time to work on that. It is a very tedious process. I've tried to monkey around with it. I can't get it to work very well, so I'm not your guy for that. But there's people in here that can, and it's really cool to know what they can do. For me, I just don't have the patience or time to do with that. So I just do MTH to MTH, and that for me is enough. But if you want, like I said, if you want custom, you can do it. It's all a matter of, what you can fit. So I'm working on a file for an engine that I don't have yet, but I'm just kind of playing around and figuring out what works. So I took a base file off of Proto 2 3-volt engine, and I am working on throwing a Proto 3 sound clips in there, which you can do, because what this does is once you throw a clip that is the Proto 3 only style, it automatically converts it into a Proto 3 file. So that's something that is worth noting. So it's very powerful what you can do with this. Again, it is a proceed at your own risk, but once you proceed, it's fun.
For sure. And like I said, though, it opens up an entirely different realm. And when you're able to customize your engines and make stuff that suits you and your personal taste, it makes you enjoy your models a lot more. But like I said before, it's definitely its own rabbit hole. And like Matt said, one that you should proceed with caution. But if you'd like to know more, so we don't take another hour talking about sounds, if you'd like to know more, definitely reach out to folks in the Matt server. They'll be able to help you out, answer some questions, and if you're interested, they'll have a good resource to get some pretty quick feedback and to go from there. So yeah, definitely recommend it.
Oh yeah, and one final thing on this is that there's certain engines that just need some help, and one of the first ones I can think of personally off the bat, and Zach, I just gave you the file for this one, so you're welcome, is the Unshrouded J. That engine, the sound file, like I said, is fantastic, volume for days and all the goodies. However, the one thing I personally did not like in it was the whistle. So it has a whistle they use it on this, and they use it on the 5-volt Erie triplex. Got this really high pitched kind of thing. To me, I don't like it on that specific engine. So I went ahead and threw in the 3-volt 611 J whistle, and it sounds a million times better. So that's just one example of what you can do with this. You can take just a horn and throw it on throw it on your old file and be done. So, gone are the days where, like I said, if you don't like just the horn, you want to change just the horn, just throw the horn clips on, you're done. So there's really, like I said, no limit to it, but that's it. That's all.
Well, thank you, Matt Z and Johnny. That was it was extremely informative, and I think what they both said is that if you are looking for additional assistance, please feel free to join the Matt Discord server. We have experts in there that can definitely help you if you're interested in doing customized sounds. And again, folks, it is free. Doesn't cost anything. Just a matter of just clicking and creating an account if you don't already have a Discord account, and just acknowledging the questions, and bam, you're in.
That's another thing. You mentioned free, and I do got to say this: doing this stuff with the MTH is free. There's no charge to this. The program is free. The sound files are free. You just take the file and go. You don't have to. This does not cost anything. The only thing you would have to buy is a way to hook up your TIU to the computer with a cable, but that's just a couple of bucks. But after that, this whole thing is free, no charge.
Yeah, and if you have a newer TIU, I think it's just a USA. It's a USB B to A.
Yep,
and that's all you need. So I think those are like you could probably find those at Walgreens nowadays, but probably like $5 up that. So yeah, there's not much of a cost investment for what you can get out of this, and you can make some pretty sweet sound sets for your engines. All right, gentlemen. Well, this was a fantastic episode. I can already tell you. It's actually something we had discussed before, and we've been wanting to do it. But we've had so many other episodes where we've had interviews, and obviously we had a catalog show, and we have a lot of people coming on, and we wanted to take the time to use some of these breaks from interviews where we could actually just go over, go back to our roots, go back to a specific topic for O-Scale. And, sounds was definitely one of those things that we wanted to cover. And I think it was definitely successful. I think we definitely covered everything that we wanted to cover. And again, folks, if you have any questions or anything about this, please feel free to reach out to us. You can leave a comment on Podbean. You can join our Discord server and ask us in person if you'd like. You can send us an email. Our email address is in the Discord. I'm sorry, not in the Discord. I apologize. The email address is in the show notes for each podcast. So, it's easy to kind of, find us if you need us. So, gentlemen, any closing notes on the sound podcast we had tonight?
I enjoyed this one. This is a lot of fun. I know it was a lot of me running my mouth, so my voice is a little hoarse, but no, I really enjoyed this. I think, like you said, man, I think this is something that we've wanted to do for a while. It just kind of got, lost in the shuffle with other things. And I'm glad we were able to tackle it tonight. A lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoyed this discussion. Really shows how important sound is. Really shows how much the digital age has taken hold of model trains and how it's going with the future. Makes me very optimistic, very hopeful. And tonight was a fun episode. First, just 3 of us episodes since I've joined as a host. So this is a kind of a special milestone for me here at the Matt and Matt podcast. And they're probably going to kick me off the podcast after this, so I'm going to enjoy it while I'm still here. I'm out.
But actually, Johnny, it has been fantastic having you on
the
podcast.
A lot of fun.
You were a fantastic addition to this podcast, and honestly, I don't. And Matt can agree with this, but I don't think there was anybody else out there that we would want on this podcast with us, but you.
But yeah, I'm really glad that my months of pestering here on the podcast, as your number one fan, has got me a place on the podcast. So I really can't thank you guys enough for having me on. I really appreciate it.
To quote Ken Bianco Sr., when I first heard you listen to the podcast, I about fell out of my chair.
We've all come quite a long way, especially you guys with this podcast. It's been great.
Thank you very much. This is a lot of fun. I know we've talked about this before. I'm not going to, keep going on it, but this is honestly a dream come true. And I love this. This is a ton of fun. You guys, everybody who listens, a huge thanks to all you guys. It means a ton.
Yep. And stay tuned, folks, because we got some awesome guests coming on the show. We're actually pretty booked up for the next several months. So we have nothing but great content coming your way. And of course, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you listeners out there, because you guys are the reason that we do this podcast. We are over 11,000 downloads now on this podcast, and I just can't believe that we're there. Again, like, this is all because of your ears out there, like, because you're listening to us, because you're giving us feedback, because you're joining our Discord server. Like, we're doing this because we want to interact with people. We want to help people in this O-Scale industry. And so we really, really, really thank all of our listeners out there because, we do this for you. All right, guys. Well, Johnny, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on YouTube at Audamus. That's Audamus. That's my YouTube channel. You can find me there screaming at inanimate objects, getting hit in the face with boxes, and occasionally I'll talk about trains. You can also find me on Instagram where I post a lot more often, not so much recently because I've been lazy, but yeah, I post a lot more often on there. You can reach out to me, say hello. I love talking to folks, and just reach out, say hello, and let's be friends. You can also find me on the Matt and Matt Discord server. You can find me in the voice chat there, or usually crawling through the comments and making very sarcastic remarks at Matt Z or Matt R.
Matt Z, where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube under Matt-Trainlover9943. You can also find me on Facebook under the same name. And like Johnny said, I'm in the server all the time talking. We're talking sound sets, we're talking trains, we're talking you name it. Sometimes talk about other things too, like sports and music. You never know. But whenever you get on there, just join us. We have a ton of fun, no matter what we're talking about.
And you can find me on YouTube at West Chicago Model Railroad. I'm on Facebook under the same name. And I'm also on Instagram. If you just search up WCMRR, you will find me and the occasional photos that I upload. So with that said, everybody, thank you for listening. And everyone have a wonderful night.
See ya.
Take good care.
I'm glad my months of pestering as your number one fan have got me somewhere. So,
number one
I
fan.
don't know who performed that.
All right. Come on, Siri.